OK, Meghan Markle is the top choice for the Democrats to be presidential candidate in 2024 if they pick a woman. Is it true or false?
Well, I'm not being funny, but if that's the best they can do, they're in a lot worse trouble than I thought they were already in. I thought Joe Biden was terrible, but if Meghan Markle is their best chance, then wow, what a sorry state of affairs.
I thought to be American president, you had to say that you had no loyalty to a foreign. Oh, she'll be fine.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Well, just got no loyalty. I think that's more of the thing, isn't it?
No loyalty to a foreign prince. Yeah, that's true. That's definitely.
I do wonder though if I trust her more than I trust some politicians. that is concerning. When I thought, do you know what, she might be quite good at that.
Danielle, I think you secretly like her.
I secretly do. Do you know what? I like a strong woman. I'm not going to lie. I like a strong woman. I like what she stands for. She just took it way too far.
But she's a psychopath.
So to be American president then?
Well, I suppose so, but I think this has always been part of the plan all along, you know, to get rid of the titles, to annoy the British establishment so much that they took them off her. Now she's talking about using the surname Spencer and all of that. But, you know, I can't really get my head... I thought Meghan was unpopular with the South Park, taking the mickey out of her and Harry and everything. They're not that popular in the States, are they?
I think, Ben, there's huge divisions in America, isn't there? Because Donald Trump is probably the most popular and least popular politician in the country simultaneously, depending on who you ask.
Yeah, I think, you know, with this, the Democrats have been in power for a few years now. They've got into a forever war, which they have no exit strategy from. Yeah. They've crashed the economy. They've destroyed the country. They don't want the presidency next time round. So they've gone, who's the worst possible candidate? So we can lose this, so we don't have to clean up the mess that we've made.
No, I'm sorry, I've got to intervene on that. The worst possible candidate is Joe Biden.
No, that is true.
They've gone from dementia to delusional.
I might be able to help you on that one. I think the worst possible candidate they could pick is Kamala Harris. Because if Meghan Markle's topping these kind of polls, what a sorry state for the vice president when she's not even in the top person, considering she is literally a heartbeat away. And Joe Biden's that old. You are a heartbeat away. Yeah.
I reckon if Kamala Harris wants to be president of the United States, she should walk into the Oval Office, see Biden and go, boom!
But seriously, Meghan Markle, the leader of the free world, I mean, come on, that's a horror story.
I mean,
you want to, like, pinch yourself, wake me up, wouldn't you?
We are in 2023, so literally anything can happen now. I've given it this idea that, things have got to make sense eventually. No. Things are just going to get progressively worse and more preposterous as we go further into the year and further into the year.
I just wonder whether, you know, global politics was always like this, but we just never noticed when we were younger. Because it's almost like you think, in my day, they wouldn't have had nutters like that.
Well, Ronald Reagan was an actor, and he was a great president.
Yeah.
So maybe Meghan Markle... No, she wasn't. Let's get her
I love how you couldn't even make it to the end of that sentence.
I couldn't even get through it.
Pete, what status for Britain if Meghan Markle were to be president of the United States? I mean, what impact does it have?
Well, I'm not going to lie. I would hardly say Joe Biden is the biggest fan of America. Let's look at
Britain.
Britain, sorry. Well, I don't think he's a fan of America either. But he's not the biggest fan of Britain because look at his behaviour over Ben Wallace and how America have blocked him from taking over the NATO chief role, which I actually think Ben Wallace would be very good at. I think it's a role that he was kind of built for.
And he didn't put the Churchill bus back into the Oval Office, did he? That's very interesting.
That was an interesting one, but I have to admit, I don't think it could get any worse.
Anyway, is it true or false that she is the front-running female for the Democrat nomination?
I think this might be true.
Do you think?
I do. I think this might be true.
OK.
Should we go? I think it's true. I'll go true.
It is absolutely true!
Oh, no!
I really hate when we clap these things.
Sometimes the claps get more exciting and less excited, depending on the situation. OK, couldn't make this one up. OK, NHS Weight Calculator that's online has actually made people fatter. Is it true or false?
How do we know it's the weight calculator that's done it?
Well, because... Do you want me to tell you something?
No, I want to know,
No, actually, well, we will ask you whether it's true or false, but it might be true. It might be true that it encouraged you to eat 4 Big Macs extra per week if you did 1 hour walking.
It's like they say the camera adds £10. Apparently the calculator adds 10 stone.
I like that.
That's very good. Well over, isn't it? The calorie count,
What was the calorie count?
Well, they've basically they added an extra 200 calories. Is that right?
It's something like that,
a day.
Yeah.
I said, oh, you'd be fine with that. And
Oh, God.
that equates to a
Hey,
four Big Macs a
what
week.
makes me laugh is there will be people up and down the country going, oh, I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's a great diet.
But you know when you're overweight because you know, I make sure that I wear jeans that have got no stretch in them whatsoever, and they tell me instantly whether I put an ounce on because I literally can't get in them or they're loose or whatever. You people know when they've put on weight and when they've lost weight, surely.
This is what I always make when we talk about obesity and all this kind of stuff. Everybody knows you should get more exercise. Everybody knows you should eat healthy. Everybody knows what they should be doing. They just choose not to do it.
Yeah.
And I think they use these kind of stories and all this kind of stuff to kind of give an excuse as to why they're not doing it. The reality is they're just too lazy. And they don't want to take any responsibility for their life. Because this is a bigger problem I think we've got in Britain is we're completely consequence free. So if you want to drink yourself to death, eat yourself to death, do all sorts of things, the state is there to pick you up.
I disagree.
There's no
Fantastic.
I
no
disagree
consequence.
completely.
No.
I think absolutely what a load of rubbish.
Well, you
As
know
a
what I
woman
mean.
who has struggled all my life with weight, particularly after having children, it's absolutely not about being lazy, because the one thing you do when you have a child is never be lazy again. And yet I really struggle with my weight. I think that weight gain is very much attached to mental health issues. I think it's very much attached to a state of mind. It's attached to food that we don't realise has hidden calories in. I think that there's a lot more elements of responsibility, but ultimately, of course, it's your body. You make those choices, and we all know we should eat less. We also know we should exercise more. But ultimately, I think the only thing that really worked for me is yoga and fasting, and they're the only two. But you have to find what works for you.
I when I worked at the House of Commons, we always used to get these larger ladies in, and they go,
You're so polite,
You tiptoed around that like a pro.
Larger ladies.
They used to sit down and they go, I can't get a job, I've got a thyroid problem. You haven't. I go, let's eat a pizza with thyroid problem. You haven't got a thyroid problem.
My mum has a thyroid problem.
Do you know what? I hated being pregnant so much, and it's terrible to say that because I know a lot of people would love to be pregnant, so I feel terrible even saying it. But I didn't like the getting bigger and bigger and bigger side of it, and the size of it, and the size of it. But when I had the baby, I just thought, I just can't bear it. I got actually lost so much weight that I was actually thinner than before because I couldn't diet when I was pregnant because obviously you can't. So I just as soon as I was so happy. I was like everyone was cheering, get the baby out. I want to stop eating.
Lois, you have got
Lewis?
to. Lois, you've got to be an absolute crank, and I'll tell you why. Who goes to the end of their pregnancy and goes, the number one thing I missed was the dieting?
Who does that? Oh my God. Yeah. It's like when people go on holiday and they go, oh, I missed going to the gym. I was like, oh, be quiet.
Yeah, you know what I didn't like? The women were nice to me when I was pregnant. It was absolutely horrible. I couldn't wait to have doors slammed in my face again and then get back to normal. Do you know what I mean?
I'm not used to people being that nice to me.
No, not women anyway.
Lois Perry, unpopular with other women. That's a surprise. Okay.
We get on, don't we, Danielle?
We do.
Okay. Look, I think we might know what the answer to this is, but let's continue with asking you. Did the NHS launch a weight loss calculator that actually made you fatter? Is it true or false?
The only thing that makes me doubt this is that an NHS scheme might have failed. That's never happened before.
NHS IT system
Never
failed.
happened before.
Yeah, I think we're going to say
true.
yes. Yeah, it's true.
It's absolutely true. 20 points each. So to Pete and to Danielle. St Paul's Cathedral has been criticised for calling Winston Churchill a white supremacist on its website.
Good Lord. I really hope this isn't true, but unfortunately, I know that it is because this story was literally everywhere.
I think you've just blown apart the myth.
You know how the programme works.
This story would kind of it went mental on Twitter a couple of days ago, and what I find interesting was that there are people who work in these kind of institutions that think that that was a perfectly normal way to describe probably one of the most important people in British history. like arguably one of the most influential people in world history more than anything else.
The reason we've got free speech is because of
Yeah.
him.
But it
And
goes.
it stayed there for a year.
Yeah,
didn't
it was there for a
before it was
year.
picked up on.
But it goes even further than that, because, of course, it was on the 29th of December 1940 when Winston Churchill ordered fire marshals to stand on the top of St Paul's Cathedral and literally kick incendiary devices off the roof so it didn't burn down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the man personally saved the building.
That's how they thank
And that's how
him.
they thank him. But yeah.
Thanks for saving our historic cathedral, you racists.
I was reading this thing from Nicholas Soames, who is the grandson of Winston Churchill, and he said that actually the family were really offended by it and actually quite upset over what was said. And I thought he made a really good comment. He just said, the people who wrote that just need to have a long, hard look in the mirror and then go and have a very stiff drink. Which is like the most Nicholas Soames thing you can ever say.
Do you remember what Nicholas Soames' first wife said about him?
Yes, the wardrobe
Yeah,
thing.
she said that having sex with him was like a wardrobe falling on top of you with the key still in the lock.
You know what? Yeah.
That is
That's great.
that is devastating.
So descriptive.
Yeah.
So descriptive.
That's the one thing I kind of miss about British society. There's no like quotes like that
That is
anymore,
so
really.
good.
Is there? There's not that many.
Well, famously, if we're going to do Winston Churchill quotes, famously he went into the toilet in the House of Commons, and when he went and Attlee was in there, and he refused to have a pee next to him, and he said, why won't you stand next to me? He goes, whenever you see anything large and privately owned, you try and nationalise it.
I've not heard that one, but I might use that one in the future.
Excellent.
Has St Paul's Cathedral accused Winston Churchill of being a white supremacist on its website? Is it true or false?
Sadly, it's true.
It's absolutely true! Muted applause there.
Very
Okay.
muted.
According to reports, Nicola Sturgeon has been hit so hard by the mortgage crisis that she's now living in her luxury motorhome. Is it true or false?
Well, we cranky finally got the keys to the minivan. That must be why
You've
she's
been holding
so
up.
keen to get her driving licence last week,
Oh,
the day
yeah,
before she
yeah.
was arrested.
So she can flee around the country.
So she can,
It's amazing that actually when the police arrested her, apparently they discovered that the van itself, the motorhome, didn't have any insurance.
Really?
Although it wasn't
Well, she
on
hasn't got a driving licence.
yeah, no tax, no insurance, no license.
Didn't they dig up the garden looking for documents?
They did dig up the garden.
mean,
They-
did it?
What the hell? I mean, it's like an episode of Brookside. Do you remember Brookside? When they dig up...
Patio's coming up.
Yeah.
Something under
Whenever the
there.
patio comes up in a soap, you're, oh, there's a dead body.
That's the cost of the motorhome, is you can bury things in the garden and then drive off. They'll never find
Yeah.
it. Move the house.
It's got a different garden every week.
Different garden every week.
But look, just on the subject of the SNP, Ben, just for a second.
Yeah.
Do we think that they're now busted flush? Because they have had significant problems since Nicola Sturgeon left office.
I don't see how they can survive. I think one of the biggest dangers that it will give Labour a real direction to go down for the next election in terms of building majority, because Scotland is to play for. The SNP, I think, will be wiped out, and they might actually creep into government on the back of Scotland.
Well, the one thing I agree with you on the Labour point, but I don't agree with you on the SNP because they are still leading in the polls, both on the regional list and on everything on the Westminster list as well.
Isn't Hamza Youssef the only SNP First Minister who hasn't been arrested?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh, don't. I don't know.
What do they need to do in the SNP to not be leading in the polls, honestly?
But no, I suppose when you look at the list of what voters in Scotland think is going to be the real issues, independence still ranks either third or fourth, depending on which company you look at. And I still find that fascinating. And I think the yes to independence voters will vote for any party that put independence first. So that everything else will come second. So I think the SNP can survive because if you notice, Hamza has really doubled down on the independent stuff because I think that is how he's planning to stay in power.
But actually, Pete, let me ask the question that Lois just posed. You know, what does it take for the SNP to go behind in the polls? Because, I mean, you're talking about a series of scandals that are pretty serious. You're talking about the suggestion of all of this gender reassignment. You're talking about the First Minister, former First Minister, being arrested. You're talking about them digging up gardens. And, you know, and yet the popularity of the SNP doesn't wane. And this comes on the back, of course, Pete, of the fact that all public services now in Scotland are worse than those in England after the SNP ran them.
I look at it as it's up to the other parties to take down the SNP. I think for a long time, Scottish Conservatives, Scottish Labour, Scottish Lib Dems, all of them have been very weak. They've not really been very effective. I know, obviously, Scotland is kind of a one-party town, but in terms of the policies they put forward, in terms of the kind of competency to actually take the SNP to account, it's been terrible. And I think that's one of the reasons the SNP have done so well, and I think it's probably well they survive.
Isn't the old adage, though, that you don't win elections, that you lose them?
Yeah, so usually it's incumbent government, it's easier to lose one than it is to win one.
Yeah, but you say that, Lois, but... I mean, they've done everything possible to lose, haven't they?
I know.
But the reality is, and the reason I asked the question, Lois, is that I notice with devolved assemblies right across this country that no matter how incompetent they are, all they ever do is blame the Westminster government.
Yeah.
And there is an irony here that may well keep Sadiq Khan in the mayor's office, by the way, that the worse you are at the job, the more electable you become.
And also the more stringent you seem to be with any sort of little bit of power that you get. I mean, if you look at the COVID regulations during lockdown, wasn't it the Welsh First Minister, that's sellotaping off or whatever, supermarket shelves with toys?
Yes.
You had Scotland. The reason that we had masks in schools is because we didn't want to have a row with Scotland because they wanted to bring them in. It's a little bit of power, isn't it? Anything that they can use.
It's what I call the auction of piety, which is when Scotland brings in the masks, England must bring in masks and banning supermarkets from opening. When England bans supermarkets from opening and masks, then Wales wants to ban masks, supermarket opening and churches or whatever. And it just goes round and round and round.
I think you're right here, because I always go back to the 2015 general election when it was the first leaders' debate. And Nicola Sturgeon, according to everybody in England and Wales, was like the greatest thing you've ever seen. And yet anybody who knew anything about politics was like, no, she's actually terrible. And I think the media has been really weak at holding the SNP accountable for the record. And I think it's the same with Labour Wales. Like, we don't really know what's going on unless you live in those two, well, either of those places. And I think that's lent into this narrative that they're more competent than they actually are. Because I go back to COVID, Nicola Sturgeon was seen as the sensible one. She was seen as like leading the way. And like we said, she wasn't really that good on any of this stuff.
But Ben, hang on a second, Ben. Can I just ask you about a purely practical point? Because I've got a theory, and you're in political communications, right? So I've got a theory that the reason why these people can get away with what they're doing is because, Boris Johnson or Rishi Sunak or any of them do not have press officers sat in Edinburgh permanently.
Right.
But it was actually the Scottish First Minister does, similarly for Wales, similarly for London, similarly for Manchester with Andy Burnham. And so consequently, there are a group of people, in the case of Sadiq Khan, dozens of them, who literally do nothing other than just feed the local and regional press in London sob stories about why they're not to blame for what's going on.
Yeah, it's a big problem because obviously in Westminster they have to govern for the whole country, whereas in Scotland all they focus on is Scotland. So they can bang the drum talking about Scotland all day till the cows come home, whereas in Westminster you just practically can't do that. You've got foreign policy, you've got domestic policy for the entire UK, you've got to deal with trade, you've got to deal with, everything across the country, and all they do in Scotland is talk about independence and Scotland, because they actually don't do anything, frankly.
And sympathetic regional media.
Sympathetic regional media.
Yeah.
OK, so just a quick question then, to recap, get back on track. Come on, you can do this, has Nicola Sturgeon had so many problems with her mortgage that she's moved into her motorhome? Is it true or false?
I don't think she could do that, because where would she do her...
No!
So those allegations are not yet proven.
Yeah, it's false.
False.
False. We say false.
It is absolutely false!
That was The Woke That Was, continues after the break. Welcome back to That Was The Woke That Was.
OK, Keir Starmer got into trouble for illegally selling ice creams in France in the 1980s. Is it true or false?
Oh, God.
This is true, isn't it?
I've
He
seen
got a
that.
smack on the wrist.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I do find this funny, because I think this might have been a strategic leak from the Labour leader's office.
What, because of the Blair rumours?
That, but also to give Keir Starmer some kind of personality.
It's his running through fields of wheat.
Yeah, it is.
It's a very innocuous rule breaking.
I think you're spot on there, Ben. I don't think this is as accidental as people might make it out to be. Because Keir Starmer, let's be honest, is about as dull as dishwater. He's not an inspiring leader. If you look at polls that were out this week, in terms of preferred Prime Minister, he's only 4 points ahead compared to Rishi Sunak. And it's, you know, he's not exactly inspiring leadership, not just within his own party, but within the country.
But what
and
with
I
that
wonder
sexy voice he's got?
Yeah.
I can't. Danielle, can you understand that? With that gorgeous, manly voice.
I don't understand me. I don't understand why. There's so many. I don't understand why they've picked the most boring guy. but the truth is, I think it's kind of wonderful that's the most dirt they can find on it. Like, I mean, if you're gonna, it's a bit like no one likes the head teacher, do they, in school?
Yeah.
But you'd like to think that they follow the rules and they've got your back. So I suppose, if that's the worst they can find.
But Danielle, what's really going on here? And Ben mentioned the Theresa May. Oh, gosh, running through wheat fields was the worst thing I'd ever done. Right, the reality is that every political party now is deliberately attempting to remove anybody who's of any interest value from their parliamentary lists. So basically they get in the same old boring identikit people. So they've got to make up an excuse to explain why they're interested.
But they have to do this, because if they dare get anybody who's ever stepped out of the line, then they're going to get destroyed by the media and the other parties. I think it's a real shame that in this day, I believe this, if you make mistakes, you should be able to apologise. We're all human beings.
Yep.
But in this day and age, you can't make mistakes and you can't apologise. And so this is what you're going to get. You're going to get somebody who's not got an awful lot of character, because character, unfortunately, means that you maybe aren't perfect.
But part of the episode of South Park with Harry and Meghan was all about this concept of personal narrative. The idea that, somebody is the strong leader or somebody is the loving father or something. And there's no concept that you might be multiple things at the same time. I mean, there are people who've been convicted of war crimes who were very nice to their family, right? It's not true to say that people are simply one thing. But look, you've voted Labour in the past. I think look, you're still welcome.
He has to bring this up. He has to.
Security's at the door.
I will vote Labour.
Okay, but do you think the Labour have gone off the boil?
I think that it's a case of nowadays, I honestly believe that you would have to be a lunatic to go into politics. I think that anything you've ever done wrong, ever, will be turned and used against you. It's a very strange situation that we're in. And what then tends to happen is the Donald Trumps of this world happen, because people then eventually go, stop telling me what to think, stop telling me what to do. Brexit in case, I will do what I want to do. And then you get these rebel pullaways. So that's my personal opinion on politics.
I think you're right here, because I always go back as to when I said Donald Trump was going to win the presidential election.
Donald.
And it was Megyn Kelly this was in one of the Republican debates. I really went for him, and he went only Rosie O'Donnell. Like, he made a joke of it. He wasn't interested in being named. And I said, as I was watching it with my father, I said, that's the next president of the United States.
Yeah.
And everybody laughed at me at the time. And I think you bang on here. And I think it's the fact that eventually somebody comes along that's a big personality that doesn't look like they care about anything, like being called names or whatever, and they become very magnetic.
They do, because people are sick of being dumbed down.
Yeah.
But you actually, but funnily enough, we've seen this situation from last week, which was going on in Russia. Yevgeny Prigozhin is also very similar in that respect. OK, he didn't become president of Russia, but at the end of the day, you look at him and you think, is this somebody who's similar to Boris? Is this somebody who's similar to Trump? And right across the world, we've seen people like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the thing in Russia that was really interesting is that this guy was actually calling for more ammunition to shoot at Ukraine. So he wanted more war, not less. Everyone in the West went, great guy, yeah, go for Putin. No, he'll make it worse.
What was quite interesting about him was that he said that, first of all, he said that the denazification was actually a lie. He said that Ukraine was no risk to Russia. NATO was not a risk to Russia. But actually, he just wanted to invade Ukraine because he just said it just shouldn't exist. Right? They weren't threatening us. They weren't having a go at us. They weren't neo-Nazis, and they weren't in collusion with NATO.
We just don't.
Yeah, let's just have them anyway.
Well, there's a school of argument that says that actually it was Putin, that they fell out because Putin was trying to take a more softly. I know this sounds ridiculous. softly approach, and this guy just, as you say, was like, I just want to get in there.
Can you imagine turning to Putin and go, "Oh, Vladimir, you old softy."
This guy looks like the kind of guy you'd see in one of those flat roof pubs that only serves carling, with like Sky Sports stickers. He looks like a proper geezer.
No, I
does.
always think that.
Those really
I think
dodgy pubs.
The ones in the middle of council estates.
I love how again you tiptoed around that.
We grew up in Shameless. It's fine. We understand what you're talking about.
What makes me laugh about Yevgeny Prigozhin is that now he's gone to Belarus. If he really does want a job and he's given up the Wagner Group, he could be Phil Mitchell's cousin from Russia in EastEnders, couldn't he? But actually, funny enough, I believe that I've met Yevgeny Prigozhin. I'm not joking, because in 1992 I went on a school trip to St. Petersburg. And,
he wasn't bothering you.
And the food was so bad that I managed to find one of the only hot dog stands in the city. And apparently at that time it was owned by Yevgeny Prigozhin, and he actually worked there. So can you imagine? He sold me a hot dog in 1990.
I've never understood.
Brilliant.
He's Putin's caterer. If he wanted to do a coup, he should just poison his food. What was he doing? This whole theatre.
I will tell you, I went to a Russian restaurant the other day. You wouldn't need to poison the food. Oh, what? Beetroot soup. Fantastic. Unbelievable. OK, so has Keir Starmer been in trouble for illegally selling ice creams on the French Riviera in the 1980s? Is it true or false?
It's true, isn't it? Yeah,
It's
we'll go
true.
true.
It's absolutely true! Vladimir Putin has revealed that his favourite song is Yesterday by the Beatles. Is it true or false?
I don't know. I think maybe the line is yesterday all my rubles seem so far away since the sanctions.
Yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away.
That's what he was singing.
Yesterday.
I mean, I have to say, I put on Twitter, I said, the one thing you can't do as a Russian president is allow the country to be humiliated. And Russians will put up with any level of hardship other than being humiliated. You have to say, losing a war to a comedian. I went to Latvia years ago to be an election monitor, and I have to say they had not realised that Right Said Fred were a comeback, because they all had the shaved head, tight white t-shirt and stonewashed jeans. Unbelievable. OK, has Vladimir Putin revealed that his favourite song is Yesterday?
I would have thought it would be back in the USSR about Ukraine.
Oh. Do you know what? I think it might be true, because I've been hearing you singing a song in a decidedly Putin-esque accent that sounded like Yesterday. So I'm thinking maybe it is true, Andre.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true! Elon Musk has banned the words cis and cisgender on Twitter. Is it true or false?
Yes, it is true, this. I know about this. And I completely agree, because it was being used in an upsetting way, and it was being used in a hate speech way. And so he said, yeah, no,
so just to be clear to people watching who might not know, what is cis and what is cisgender?
Well, I even had to look into this. I did know, but even I was a bit like, so anyone who still identifies as the sex they were born with is cisgender. No, you're just a woman or a man.
Yeah, exactly.
What we don't need a name.
We had a word for that. It was called normal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm that.
But it was amazing, Danielle. I watched one day, and I understand why she did it. Julia Hartley-Brewer on The Breakfast Show, somebody sat down and went, look, I'm something like, they're a trans woman and you're a cis woman. And she went, no, we're not having that. She said, I'll literally throw you out of the studio.
Yeah.
Because, of course, it's trying to not level the playing field. It's trying to say there are two types of women.
It's trying to be insulting.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is trying to be insulting. Whatever way around you put this, it is insulting. You don't. You can be a trans woman, absolutely fantastic. You go for your life, but don't give me a title that you've invented.
Can I just say I do disagree on this. I think that they should be able to use these terms because it discredits them. The more they make up stupid words and the more they try to police language, the more people turn against them and say, actually, do you know what? Go away. We don't want to.
It was a scientist who invented it, and apparently he was a rather creepy bloke.
And they've
But the thing is, there are plenty of things that you can say as an insult to people that are banned on Twitter, right? You know, it's not unusual. But I don't believe I'm a cis man. I just believe I'm an ordinary bloke.
To pick up what you just said there, Dan, I think you're right. It's about the context. And what really annoys me is when I see a lot of these trans activists say, oh, well, it's not an insult, it's not an insult. And I'm like, well, I've seen it used as one.
Yes.
And I think that's a really important point. And also, interestingly, I watched this thing, I think it was on YouTube, and it was... a transsexual woman who transitioned like years ago and said, we fought to have the word transgender. We fought to have the label transgender woman. And they said, we never wanted to be women. We wanted they saying that for a long time, they actually wanted their own thing.
Yeah.
And she said, it's only this new generation that has really tried to change the rules of the game. And so I'm finding it interesting that I wonder if the trans community itself is starting to kind of pull apart a little bit and saying, like, whoa, we're going too far.
There's a difference between giving yourself a label as a community and someone else imposing it on you.
And that is exactly
And it's like the Latinx stuff. No one who's Latina or Latino wanted to be called Latinx.
No.
They hated it. And it's like, stop being woke on behalf of other
I'll tell you a little story. I was getting the underground back from this studio the other day, and there was a young lad sat on the train, on the tube train, and he said, "What is a woman?" Like, you know, on the base of my Vox Pops video that I made a little while ago. I went, "Oh, hello, good to see you." And he went, "Fat bitch." I went, no, I'm not. So anyway, he was really going for it. He was kicking off. And the thing that made me laugh most about it was I got onto the escalator, and you know how you run up one side and walk up and stand on the other. So he ran past me and went, "You'd be able to run too if you weren't such a fat bitch." But then to add insult to injury, he then waited at the top of the escalator so I could walk past him so he could continue to insult me. Then I got on the second escalator to go right up to the platform for the proper trains, stood on it, and he ran past me and said, "You still can't run, you fat bitch."
Is it Tourette's or something?
And then waited at the top and started following.
In for a penny, in for a pound.
In a way, you have to admire the commitment.
I thought that shows genuine commitment.
Good to have fans.
She came to train the unemployed.
And then he asked for a selfie.
Funnily enough, all this happened while one of our contributors, Sam Armstrong, had bumped into me. And he was saying, "Does that happen regularly?" I said, "He's a particular fan." OK, well, has Elon Musk banned the term cis and cisgender on Twitter? Is it true or false?
Well, technically, yeah, if it's used in a derogative way, yeah.
We'll say true.
It's absolutely true.
That was The Woke That Was, continues after the break. Welcome back to That Was The Woke That Was.
According to a new poll, Keir Starmer has taken a 25-point lead over Rishi Sunak over things like migrant boats and indeed inflation. Is it true or false?
Well, you could stop the boats by halving inflation of the boats. Because then no one would want to take them to sea.
I'll tell you what, that's why you get the big bucks. Well done.
Daddy's on my team.
Yeah. I don't know. How would Keir Starmer take a lead? He's not going to do anything better, is he? Frankly,
I think this is the point that's really infuriated me, because I've seen all these kind of stories last week and there's some this week. And I'm like, I want the Labour Party to actually say, well, what would you do different?
Yeah.
And it's really easy to be in opposition because you just get to criticise the government.
Yeah.
And but as we get closer to election time, they're going to have to start defending policies. And yet, the minute they bring out a policy, they'd either do a 180 on it or it just gets completely abandoned because they don't agree on it.
But it's very difficult. So, look, everybody knows that I'm on the right, but there are lots of people who are kind of in the middle of the road. And for those people, if they're angry about the cost of living crisis, if they're angry about net zero pushing up the price of their energy, if they're angry about migrants, if they're angry about any of these issues, Keir Starmer will willfully make it worse.
Yes.
And so actually, you've got no choice.
Yeah, I think you're right here. But on the other side of this, I'd look at this from the Conservative kind of collapse side of it. And a lot of this is all of their own making. Pretty much all of it is, actually, to be fair. And I think it comes down to one word, trust. I think the country doesn't trust the Conservative Party and trust.
No, not trust.
But hang on.
Trust the Conservative
Party
Party
a second, Pete.
anymore.
Are they right not to trust the Conservative Party?
I think there is a strong part of that for sure.
Well, look what happened to Liz Truss. I mean, she was rightfully elected by the members, did everything properly. She said she was going to frack. Actually, Rishi Sunak said that he was going to start fracking again when he was campaigning for the leadership. She came in, they blamed everything on her. I don't believe it was her fault, what happened at all. There's lots of other complicated economic reasons for what happened. And they just binned her. So, you know, they've lost the support of their own base.
Yeah,
that's the main problem.
Well, I actually think the way that the Tories will lose the next election and Labour will win is because Conservative voters will stay at home. They're not going to switch to Labour.
Yeah.
They just won't vote at all.
That's one of the old rules in British politics. Is Tories don't switch, they just stay at home. And this is why I think the main factor that nobody's really talking about at the moment when we look at any of these polls is not who we're going to vote for, it's are you going to vote? I think turnout will be the single defining factor of the next general election.
That makes me sad.
Peter's as our political guru, if you like. It is worth pointing out, let me just be sure I've got this right, that when you look at all these opinion polls, what they don't do is include the don't knows typically. And therefore, these can be actually quite small numbers. So as an example, it might be that Keir Starmer's got a 25-point lead, but only 60% of people have decided which way they're going to vote anyway.
Yeah, you're right there. So, like, obviously, in the media, you'll get the 25-point lead bit. What you won't get is the tables of data that go along with it, which is what sad acts like me have to go through pretty much every day. And I think this is where you have to be really careful when you're reading opinion polls. And I see it all the time on Twitter, and I'm like, you're just picking that one because it's a higher number for the party you support. Yeah. It's not. You're not looking at what they call the field work of the poll. So when did it take place? Who was asked? How were people
all
asked?
Conscious bias, isn't it?
It's all of this stuff. That, don't get me wrong, polling companies, they're not as corrupt as people think they are. They actually do a pretty good job, I think, overall. But I would say, when you read this stuff, just take some of it with a pinch of salt. We are nowhere near a general election, not really in terms of the polls to matter, but...
I read an opinion poll which was about Morecambe, where I worked for the Conservative MP for a few years. No, he was named after the town, though. But what was amazing was they'd actually found more Conservative voters than they'd found Labour voters. But then they applied some mathematics to it on the assumption that there were some Labour voters who were quiet and whatever. And so you think to yourself, the poll said that the Conservative MP for Morecambe would lose. The Conservative MP for Morecambe actually did win, but they'd found more Conservative voters. It was the mathematics they used to process it that said he was going to lose, not that they'd found more Labour voters. Yeah,
that happens quite a lot, that when you look at all the polling. So I always find the most interesting day of the general election is actually not getting the result. It's when you get all the data that actually provides that result, and that's when you really get to pull apart all the details.
Yeah, you have the people who... Sorry, Daniel.
No, go on, Lois.
No, the people that, don't want to admit, that don't want to admit they wanted to...
The quiet Tories.
Quiet Tories.
Stuff like that, so you get a disproportionate result.
Yeah.
Can I offer a suggestion? I think every ballot paper should have an option that says none of the above. And if that option wins, they have to field a new slate of candidates for every party and get rid of everyone.
Also, just really quickly, on that, what I will also say to people is don't not vote, ruin your ballot paper, because ruined ballot papers are counted, and I think ruined ballot papers are always counted. And I think if people were that angry about it, I think that number would be significantly higher, and that could be the leading headline of this election.
You should really push that forward.
Also,
use that.
Also, I just state this as a fact. I'm not encouraging you to do it. In every constituency, every spoilt ballot paper is shown to every candidate and every agent. So if you were to write a message on it, they'd all read it. I just throw that out there.
It's also a lot of fun.
I'm non-party affiliated, but it is interesting in the most recent polling that Reform are polling at 10% for the first time. And that's very, very interesting. They're bigger than Liberal Democrats now.
Yeah, I saw this exact... I think we must have looked at the exact same polling, and I think that should, terrify the Conservatives, but I also think it's a problem for the Labour Party as well.
Yeah, me too.
And everyone keeps saying, Reform are a threat to... the Tories most. I was like, no, look at UKIP. UKIP took more seats and more votes from Labour areas than they ever did in Conservative areas. And it will be interesting to see how Reform fare.
The reality is on Reform and Reclaim, and indeed UKIP and the Brexit Party, they appeal to people that tend to watch the shows that I appear on. People who are patriotic, who believe in Brexit, who might have voted either Conservative or Labour or indeed SNP, but actually are just people who want to see the country run by people in a democratic fashion. Anyway, is it true that Keir Starmer has taken a 25-point lead over Rishi Sunak as a result of inflation and the migrant boat crisis?
I hope not, but it kind of sounds true.
It does sound true, sadly. Yes, we're going to say true.
It's absolutely true!
I'm not clapping the one Labour supporter.
To think
Just me.
that crook who sold ice creams in France.
Yeah.
storming ahead. Disgusting. Should not be encouraging that.
The Oscars have introduced new diversity rules. Any film that wants to win must have 30% of the cast from a minority group, such as LGBTQ or the disabled. Is it true or false?
It feels like another attack on the arts, all this.
It
It
is.
just starts to get ridiculous. I mean,
It's-
as a company, you should honour diversity, of course. Like, we all understand the importance of it. But as an art form, it just starts to feel so restrictive.
Yeah.
Because the arts are supposed to be free and...
Danielle, should we feel paranoid about this? Because I've heard of people talking about book burnings in Nazi Germany and things like that. Look, there's no point ever comparing what's going on now with that sort of totalitarian regime. But there is always a feature of these extremists that the first thing they want to do is stop anybody else being able to say anything they disagree with.
It does feel like that,
Yeah,
doesn't
it does. One thing, so I'm a big film fan. I watch a lot of films, and I was listening
Late at night.
I was listening to an interview with Richard Dreyfuss, the actor, and he said, "Does anybody remember when movies and films was actually about making art?" And I think this goes back to what you were saying. Then
That's
he
how I
just
feel.
said. And I actually think the way that a lot of these companies like Warner Brothers will get round this is they'll just start employing people in like craft services. They'll be runners. Where it's like, will they have real jobs, or are they just going to be because you need the box tick exercise?
Pete, I cannot believe we've sat in a TV studio and you've said they'll employ them as runners, not in real jobs. Well, what?
No, but you know what I mean?
no.
Like, they won't be actors.
You won't get your
they'll-
coffee
I know, yeah, I was just
But
thinking
I
that.
think
Might be spilled all over
if you
you.
read the tick box,
Yeah.
they do have to be actors.
But I
Do they
wanna-
actually have to
If
be?
you- if-
Yeah.
if you
I
read
want to know
down-
whether you could have an... are you allowed to say dwarf?
Yeah,
Could you have a black lesbian dwarf? Like,
the-
and it ticks
by the
off
way-
of the boxes in one person?
By the way, the gallery is just saying every television executive starts as a runner. So, Pete,
And
yes.
that is the truth, because my runner on Night Fever did party at the Palace, put it that way.
Schofield's runner didn't have a very long career, did he?
so my understanding now is that Pete Barnes will not be here next week. But we want to thank you for your service.
It was nice knowing you,
Nice to
Pete.
meet you. How to cancel yourself?
But we've heard lots about this, haven't we, Ben? This whole concept of only actors who are Welsh can play Welsh characters, and similarly, gay characters got to play gay characters. I mean, it's just all getting into a mess, isn't it?
It's hilarious.
It
It's like
defeats
people.
the whole object of being an actor. It's like be an actor, but you've got to play yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can become an actor, but you've got to play yourself. Yeah, so Hugh Grant, it is.
It's winning.
But do you know what? I could tell just with the conversation we've had here, just kind of how exhausted of this kind of stuff I think we are now.
Yeah.
And like, I think that most of the country is the exact same. Because when you look at most of the shows now that come out, they're absolute flops. Nothing really does very well.
And you
Or-
do find you sometimes watch the Oscars and you think, I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
And that's a bit of a worry.
Yeah, because
isn't it?
I find it really funny when you watch the Oscars and you see what the film's about. You say, oh, that one's won. Literally because it's about the transgender activists from the 1980s. Like, it's not because it's the best film.
Isn't it?
Which is really sad.
But isn't the Oscars just remarkably dull to watch? It's like
hours.
best toilet cleaner in the foreign language category.
Yeah. And also, if you notice, the audience figures for all these kind of award shows are going down and down
Apart
and down
from
and
when
down.
Gervais see your doppelganger.
Oh, yeah.
And that might know you told me something.
Yeah.
And I think
Golden
it is.
Globes, Peter.
It is woke and political correctness gone mad, the reason that the audience numbers are going down, and that relatability to be able to think, oh, I saw that movie, I wonder if that'll win.
Okay.
If it's all obscure stuff you've never seen, you think, well, I don't really care what
Yeah,
wins.
absolutely. OK, so have the Oscars brought in a diversity quota? 30% of people have to be from a minority, or you are not qualified to win anything at all. Is it true or false?
It's true.
It's absolutely true!
That was The Woke That Was, continues after the break. Welcome back to That Was The Woke That Was.
The Miss England beauty contest is going to bring back bikinis, having abolished them 20 years ago. Is it true or false?
I don't know anything about this. It's not my kind of story.
Bringing back the bikini section.
Pete, do not lie. You know you've got every beauty contest on DVD in a special room in your house you call the hobby room.
Oh, God, don't call it that.
What?
I told you about that room in private.
What?
But no.
I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful that we celebrate women's bodies. Yeah. I am absolutely sick of seeing transgender and drag acts and women not allowed to do the same. So I have absolutely no problem with the creative arts and certainly drag acts. And it's not my bag, but it's absolutely fine. But it does annoy me that as soon as a woman enjoys and embraces her body, she's promiscuous, you know, there's a big problem with it.
I'll tell you, Danielle, I'll tell you what I always think. I think that, obviously, first and foremost, I know it's an obvious comment, but we have to make it these days, men and women are different. And I think, actually, beauty is an important thing that people value in women. Now, you know, when you see these ladies, you know, the big ones with the beards and all that sort of thing, wandering around. Penises. Yeah, and people wandering around saying that women shouldn't dress up for men. Women enjoy being well presented.
I'll tell you this, a lot of women dress up for other women and for themselves. I dress up for myself.
I dress up for men.
Yes. What makes me laugh is Lois just doesn't care.
Sorry to interrupt. I find it interesting you bring up the trans aspect of this because I'm waiting for the backlash from two groups. One, the angry lesbians and very miserable Guardian writers that don't get invited to any of these things. I can't wait for those kind of comment pieces. And when a transgender woman wants to get involved and that all kicks off. So I'm surprised that we even still have something like Miss England anymore.
Is this actually about valuing, celebrating women, or is it about exploiting women?
Yeah, but why is it only exploitative when it's a good-looking, fit woman, but it's not when it's a man dressed as a woman or an obese person that looks really unhealthy in a bikini on the front cover of a magazine? Why is it only exploitative when it gives you and me power? Because that's what it does give us, isn't it? And that's why they want to stop it. It's actually misogyny. It's misogyny to stop us using our sexuality. That's what I think.
Wow. Well, amen to that. Amen to that. Well, OK, there's nothing more I can say than ask you whether they brought back the bikini in the Miss England contest.
True.
It's absolutely true. Hey. And that means that Lois and Ben got 55,000 points. Whereas Pete and Danielle got 65,000 points. So congratulations, you are the winners. What? You win a hot dog that has been imported from St. Petersburg. And I'm off now to march on Moscow. See you next time. Goodbye.
It's time for That Was the Woke That Was.
The topical quiz show that goes through all of the wokest stories of the week.
She has been fame hungry from the get-go.
Saturday at 10 on TalkTV.